Welcome, everybody. My name's Gavin Wade. I'm Artist Curator here at Eastside Projects, and great pleasure to have with us today Seema Mattu, who is also here in Birmingham, but in her studio out in Moseley. Do you call it Moseley or do you call it Borsall Heath there, actually?
Maybe Bottle Heath.
Borsall
Maybe.
Heath. Moseley Road, Borsall Heath.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes more sense. I'm just going to do a little bit of housekeeping just for everybody. So we're recording the session because we want to keep it. We'll keep playing it on our stream on the website. So hopefully everyone's cool with that. If everyone gets themselves on mute, I think I can see that everyone has done that, and we will have questions later on. We'll probably chat for 30, 40 minutes, something like that, I think, and then have some questions. But if you want to put questions into the chat, just type them in. Maybe we'll have a look during, or we'll come back to them at the end. Um, when we do questions, just do the hands up signal on it, and we'll bring you in if you want to have a chat. I think that's probably everything. So we're gonna do this is quite it's quite informal. We're gonna find some things out. Oh, Ruth Claxton's arrived. Welcome, Ruth. Good to have you in the house. And we're gonna chat around and see what is happening with SEMA's mega art production processes that are all in place at the moment. And that is because we're working with SEMA as an incidental artist. And I should also just say, I sort of describe SEMA as an artist and an incidental artist, but you call yourself a world building trickster, which I am very fond of. I really like this idea that artists rethink and rename and reposition themselves. And I guess that's also part of why we wanted to work with you, Seema, because you've got all these interesting angles and viewpoints and expressions of what it means to be you now and what it means to be here. But also, we're going to talk a little bit about a context that we were really interested in and that Seema proposed to us at the start of being an incidental artist, which is within the Valmiki community and the Valmiki temple, which is in Soho in Birmingham. So we'll touch back in and out and story tell as much as we can, but I'm sure that we're going to lose you at some points because we're about to enter quite a complex world of ideas. That's what I'm guessing. What do you think, Seema?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, you can bring everyone along.
Yeah. It
So
is a world after all, so
yeah, but we should start in this world that you're sitting in. Like this is your new studio, or quite recent, isn't it?
yeah, it is all. Like it's been about a couple of weeks, maybe three.
Yeah, it's pretty new. So you're getting to know where, and so tell us a little bit about your studio and how you've ended up in
Yeah.
this room.
Shall we have a little quick little
Yeah,
TV cribs moment?
yeah, because I
So
still, it's
let's
quite
go.
nice. It's really nice.
It's very nice. We're in the doorway. It's quite vast, in fact.
It's big, yeah, and you've got furniture.
Yeah, there's
Have you
a
got
sitting area,
have you got
guys.
a fridge in there?
No,
Looks like you
not
had a
yet.
fridge and a dishwasher and
Not yet. But just over there, I don't know if you guys can see, but just over there is a bit of a kind of library space that I will be crafting into like a bit of a music
yeah,
instrument library. And I think this is absolutely like in tandem with my project as an incidental artist.
yeah,
And
cool.
here, if we can see, I'll be showing some of these things
Uh,
throughout the talk today. Some of them are kind of like my own original like instrument skins and like structures as I'm going along the project, and others are kind of like inspo for that. So specifically around like Punjabi folk instruments, but also instruments that are used um, as a member of the temple band at, I say temple band, we also use the term Sangeet party, etc. So yeah, at the Sangeet party of the temple band in my local temple. which is Valmiki specific, and generally in sort of, yeah, Soho, Hockley, um, where I've been like a serving member for over 20 years now.
Yeah. So you, in a way, already, it sounds like the idea of a studio for you is 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 spread across a few different places. It's not like just in this room in a way. Maybe and this is new, but you've been making work for a long time.
Yeah.
And I'm imagining on to give everyone a little bit of context on screen a lot as well. So programming, rendering, animating things, as well as making stuff. So we
Yeah.
can. I think it's quite nice to imagine what all those places are. But do you think of when you're in the temple and you're part of the band there? Had you always thought? Have you thought of that before as being part of your art practice, or is it just another part of your life? Or
I think it's a big question, actually. I only in recent years have I kind of come to realize the synergy between life at Temple and life as an artist, and the way in which those things sort of interweave. I used
yeah,
to think very much about like a screen-based practice being something where, for example, I couldn't play my own instruments as part of the soundtrack for my films that I'm making and whatnot. But in kind of like the last couple of years or so, I've very much amalgamated all those different tools, and it makes for a very kind of speculative, fantastical, but also like very authentic um, like identity,
yeah.
whether it's like screens based or like a physical um, like artwork or something that's maybe more like sonic, for example.
When did you have this sort of breakthrough moment or idea about what you were doing in the temple in the band and turning that into a structure to make a new pop band, folk band, punk band with from the community who were there at the temple? Because I imagine that must have just been a little spark of a moment for
Yeah,
you.
I think so. I mean, taking you back, like I'm in my 30s now, admittedly, but taking you back to when I was like a young teen growing up, and my sister and I used to go with our grandma to temple, and there was where we kind of developed an interest in sitting on the stage, if you like. The stage is like a little, imagine like a little rectangular box. Fits about maybe 8 to 10 people, if that, and it's in like in our temple, it's in the left-hand corner of it, facing outwards to everyone else. So it's a stage, but it's also kind of you kind of feel very much part of the fabric of the kind of infrastructure of the place, of the temple itself. And so it feels like you're there, but you're at the same time not like you command presence sonically, but also you are very much kind of like part of like the sangha or the people that are there and the congregation that partake in whether that's
Yeah.
ritual or prayer or the religious music or devotional music itself. And I think for me, I was initially taught like at the age of around 10 or 11, initially taught kind of like basic dolgi or like hand drum
Mm.
effects, and then like went on to develop that myself and teach myself that. So I think again, like true to my art practice, it's my approach to instrument playing is also I think quite like original, like specific to me because of like the self-taught nature
Hmm.
of having kind of undertaken that it's not something that was necessarily like privy or like there weren't necessarily like open classes etc to learn instruments, so it was very much like I felt anyway like, and I still feel like part of my kind of duty as a citizen of Birmingham and also as a world building artist as well to really like encompass like ensure that everything that I'm doing encompasses like an entire offering. So for example, if it's a film, then I'm like really actively thinking about the sound that's involved in it, or how the sound is embedded in the work. And if
Yeah.
that's something that's more sculptural, then like what does it feel like to feel it, for example? What's the tangibility of it? How does that kind of like root itself in the world that I'm building, whether that's SEEMA World or like the different strands of SEEMA World. In particular, with this project, the strand that we're looking at is a strand called Siahi, which refers to more to this. So it's this ink here. It's kind of made of like kind of like a paste, and it's, as I understand it, made of like kind of iron shavings, if you like, and it helps with um, when it's attached to like the animal hide in this case, or like the drum skin, it changes, of course, the pitch and the sound of the drum in general. So I
Mm.
think that it also just looks quite bodily to me, that
Yeah.
particular shape. And so yeah, that's the name of the deity which represents or reflects the project that we're talking about today.
Uh-huh. So I'm sort of might be good to talk about what I mean. Partly, I'm interested. Are those instruments? They're not specific though to the caste, to the Valmiki caste within the culture. It's kind of like a broad general instrument, and you're just using that. But it might be good to describe what is the Valmiki temple? What does it mean to be part of that community there?
Yeah, I think, well, so the Valmiki temple there's a couple, uh, there's a few in the Midlands. So there are two more specific temples where Valmiki community is most present. They're both kind of like either ends of Soho Road. So it's like already like geographically and as a geolocation, already in a place where it's situated where there is a lot of kind of South Asian population, a lot of Punjabi community, etc.
Mm.
And so the one that I frequent is more kind of in Hockley near the flyover, if anybody knows what that means. And the other one is more kind of at the top of Soho Road. Um, and so there's two there. There's another one in Wolverhampton. There's one in Bedford. There's an entity in Oxford
Mm.
um, and also in Southall. So if we're talking like Valmiki specific, and then sorry, also in Coventry as well. If we're talking like Valmiki specific, um, it seems it could be argued that like there is a smallish population or like dedicated sites to congregation for Valmiki people. But I think that's what's like most important for me as a Valmiki person um, is really to engage with community and to, as I see it, kind of back when I started and now as a duty to myself, really, for my practice, but also like to the community. Um, like I guess like in many ways, like I want to say that I make work for them, but I think I mean, I think that's beside the point. Like whether they care or not, it's kind of also like doesn't necessarily mean that um like that's the reason I make the work or I'm so involved
Yeah.
with the temple. Like it's very much still feels like a very individual and personal thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is that like there are still very much like intersections that my practice and my personhood deals with, whether
Yeah.
that's through
Well,
queerness or
that's what I mean. I'm thinking about I'm imagining all of those temples, all the Valmiki temples are quite modest. They're not like big, showy, fancy, wealthy temples.
I
Like
think
there are some, there's lots temples around the country that might look quite spectacular, but is that, I imagine that's a reflection from the idea of the Valmiki caste being untouchables, being about waste, being cleaning, which also comes through in the works that you're making. So,
I think that the like the idea of like kind of like wealth and health and like value and like aesthetic is really interesting, but also like not necessarily like superficially maybe, but I think
mm,
what I've developed and what I've like come to realize by myself, especially like in the last like year or so, is like um what I describe as like living as like an um like being an agent on fantastical living, in that like there's a lot of kind of like it's very showgirl, it's very like uh kind of like aesthetically driven in a way, it's very participatory, etc. And so like those frills exist maybe inside those confines,
yeah,
which makes for like a really fantastical approach to whether that's devotion, community, congregation, like spirituality, etc. but like for example, like my temple in particular, or like the temple that I go to, is like used to be a Victorian school, I believe. So it looks like mysterious from the outside as well. And for me, like that's something that I really embrace. It's something that like really leans into like the trickster essence of like, yeah, it might look like one thing, but when you go inside, it's entirely something different.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, I really lean into that personally.
Mm, cool. What, and so how have you these instruments that you've got with you, these are the first ones that you've made, aren't they? I don't remember you saying you'd made some before, but
Yeah, they're kind of prototypes.
yeah.
But yeah, it's certainly like a foray, a very new foray into instrument building.
But is
Um,
that's come directly out of it suddenly, and you wanted to know more about what it is that you're using when you're saying you need to pay attention to and take care of. All of a sudden, it's like, how can you actually be a maker as well?
yeah, for sure. I think for me as well, like in I'm really thinking a lot about like from like an eco-conscious and a labor
Mhm.
conscious lens.
Yeah.
So like caste being as like a subject matter or like systems of and around caste are rooted in this sort of ancestral occupation and it's kind of I guess deemed as like a birthright if you like and so what are the ways in which we can subvert that and
Mhm.
make kind of I guess like effectively what I want to be doing is um being labor positive about things I'm not sure like what that means yet. I'm still developing that but I think stemming from that is this like this idea or this like kind of genre that I'm like developing for myself within SEEMAWORLD, which acts as like a sibling to previous genres which my work fits into. So, for example, like cyberpunk and solar punk, where
Mhm.
there are these synergies and amalgamations between like tech and nature, or like dystopia versus utopia, and then like another sibling or a cousin to that would be like hope punk. So like doing things out of or creating out of radical kindness or creating outputs which depict radical kindness, for example. But
Hmm.
then for me, I'm like developing that further. I think specifically through a caste lens, which is around subverting expectations around untouchability, waste, etc. And that's where I think like this eco-conscious, labor-conscious kind of like approach is coming into it, where I'm instead of like outsourcing materials, I'm using offcuts. Like I accept like materials that are given to me or the materials that are around me, for example, um,
Mhm.
and make magic out of them.
It's quite, I mean, in a way, there must be, it's a thing that you do as an artist if you don't have lots of resources, like
Yeah,
naturally, we want to transform materials and use what's around us. But it's sort of interesting when that becomes a political objective, is kind of interesting. How does it play out with the eco element? Is that to do with the animal skins that traditionally are used for a lot of the instruments, or
yeah.
how else do you?
This is another instrument. This is called a bugchu, and you play it. I'm kind of sorry how I'm trying to play it now, but you kind of play it under your
Oh,
armpit.
yeah, the string. Yeah, can't hear it.
Can't hear it at all.
No.
Not at all. Well, you play it under your armpit, and it kind of makes this very like kind of feels like a bit of an underwater sound. But the back of it is usually kind of animal skin, often bovine skin, whether that's like usually goat skin, for example, buffalo skin. And that's just not something, well, one that's like reality, but also like for me, as a crafts person, but also like it's not something that I just like agree with in terms of using animal skins. And I feel like although I accept that that's like a like traditionally how instruments like such as this or the tabla or the dolgi are made, like it's like I want to also um approach it in a scene world way, which wouldn't be kind of like anything to do with like animal skins, for example, and in fact, like something that's a bit more futurative, something that's a bit more self-generating. So, for example, like melon skins. So recently, I've developed like prototypes around like building melon skins. So effectively, and this is really like this is I think where something it's a good example of being like eco and labor conscious because the melons also feed everyone. So I was able to kind of like feed everyone at the same time, like feed my family, feed my friends, etc. But at the same time use this towards um, crafting and making. And it's a really interesting mat material that it's turned out to be.
Yeah.
They also kind of feel like masks. So effectively, I kind of skinned them, if you like, to as thin as possible, and then had them sort of industrially fried, if you like, or dried in like huge like dryers at steam house. And then this was the outcome, and I think that was part of it as well, like part of embracing this like genre of like making or like the speculative genre of like approach to storytelling, if you like,
Yeah.
um,
Hmm.
that I'm developing in SEEMAWORLD, which is around like also just accepting like having as little conditions as possible and accepting the like the pure materiality of a thing, uh,
Mm.
and allowing it to just kind of like become whatever it becomes and embracing that. Um,
Have you been able to do a test yet on sound in relation to them and how they generate the sound or
Not yet. I think that I don't know if you can hear it, but I don't know if
it's
you can hear
weird, it doesn't pick up the sounds, no?
this.
No,
But
not at all. It's just your voice and it's like not picking up the other
oh,
it
I'm
must be
not.
filtering out.
Um, it's. I wish this was kind of in person for people to feel it because it's a very it's they're strange, like they're a strange feeling, but the
Yeah.
sound it makes is also a little bit indescribable, like in kind of like one or two words, like it's
Mm.
feels like it needs to be touched and it's tangible. Um, and so, but like also at the same time, it has a lot of like ripple in it, for example. It's
I
kind of
mean, it looks like it's paper or another material. It's like doesn't you wouldn't imagine straight away. You think it's a pretend melon rather than a real melon. So
for sure. I think in some ways it feels like that. I also really like the way it's just kind of preserved itself. So this is like amusing of like how it did look. Like I sculpted this one so it was like cylindrical but had the two sides cut off. But the
yeah,
way it's like retained a shape,
yeah.
but still kind of like done its own thing is something again like that I'm really embracing. As to like what are these like fruitions and actually like um about the embracing of like their own like kind of outcomes. And I was saying to someone else like when I was first developing this that it also kind of in a way feels like this like my the closest thing I'll ever get to like parenthood. Um, very much feels like queer parenthood in the sense that I'm just very much letting them like evolve as they do. And it's very organic. But as to like how they would stack up like as a part of a drum skin is something I'm yet.
Mm. And then that's what you want. So you want to make the instruments, and then you've got to find people who are going to help you play them.
Maybe, yeah. Or maybe I could teach people to make their own instruments. I
Ah,
think
okay.
and that this is like very much part of the project, right? Like it's super participatory. It's very much like, um, yes, let's do this together, but also let's support you in like whatever you want to express sonically and blah. And I think that's really been a key element for me throughout and so far of the project is ensuring that it's not like my roots in this project are around like my connection with the Valmiki community and how I've grown up with around devotional music and contemporary music in kind of like South Asian creative and cultural production. But I would just be one member of this,
Yeah,
what this is, this band.
of this new band. So we're gonna do call outs and we're gonna do rehearsal or auditions. We're gonna do auditions,
Yeah.
and you're gonna be looking for other members to join. I didn't realize if you would invite them to make their own instruments also. If these prototypes become examples for them to develop their own, then that makes That's cool.
Yeah.
You're looking for quite creative, experimental, open-minded, musical people.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think, I mean, first and foremost, just to say that, can I say the name of the band?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I guess this is an official announcement. The name of the band is Saheli. Saheli refers to, um, it's a term used for um, a friend who, I mean, it's a friend, it's gendered, but it's also could be referred to, it could be used to refer to a girlfriend, for example. It could be used in general. It's often used in songs. It's like one of a few different names that are like fairly colloquial, but also unifying. Um, and I think that's something that really kind of embodies like what I'm
Yeah.
trying to do in this project, which is ultimately to um, strike imbalances and challenge them, whether that's to do with sort of anti-blackness or misogyny, casteism, um, queer erasure, etc. All of these things that I personally consider rife in um, the way of sonic expression or like musical expression in South Asian cultural and creative production.
Yeah. So that's why you've targeted it because it's kind of rife but it's a very popular, open, attractive space to be in, as well as a medium,
Hmm.
as a kind of platform. Yeah, as a platform. It's like, but it's quite a challenge in a way, isn't it, to try and enter into the space where there already is this array of from misogyny to casteism to all different elements for you to then do it within that space.
Yeah, for sure. I think, I say rife, and by that, I probably mean casual. And I think the fact that it's so casual means that it's rife, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yes.
One thing I find in my experience as a Valmiki person and as a queer person and as a woman is that things are just casual,
Yeah.
like
So it's
happening.
not like the explicit agenda of those songs, but it's always just in there as a matter of fact, as if that's just the way it is.
Yeah, it feels like that certainly. So um ultimately like Saheli will exist. And it's also like a porous sonic collective as well. Like, but it will exist ultimately to um debunk, but also um to to be a catalyst for sonic congregation, which is joyous but also
Yeah.
open,
Yeah.
inclusive, and ultimately radically kind as well.
Yeah. And so you've proposed to start that process in July with the first event.
Yeah.
So, which is like a kind of Valmiki educational day party, bringing
Yeah.
people together, community from around the UK, but also open for other people. But are you still imagining that's going to be like the announcements of the auditions, or we'd start a little bit in the run up to that also now?
I think that I think my relationship with the Valmiki temple is very much like ongoing and eternal, but at the same time, around like a kind of earlier or pre-stage to this project. It very much sets like contextual underpinnings, musical underpinnings for like my
Yeah,
own offering to this project. But as that project becomes like bigger and wider audiences are invited in, etc., and becomes more participatory as it goes along, I do think that yeah, that I think that would be like a separate
yeah.
or
So
supplement.
so you're not only looking to find people from within that community, you're opening it out. Yeah.
Very much so.
But what will be the specifications for people to imagine that they should put themselves forward and turn up and try and join the band?
I think it's mainly curiosity, like a sonic curiosity, of course. Like
Yeah.
absolutely, it would be great if there was experience of uh, like playing instruments, etc. But also, I think that those things are, for me anyway, like are things that aren't are to be like non-hierarchical.
Mm.
So
Okay.
I think it's also about like a willingness, a curiosity, and like at the end of the day, like those things can be trained, they can be taught, and I very much want that to be part of like the fabric of Saheli as well, is that it's not, it's local and it's not, and it's open and it's inviting, it's warm,
Yeah.
it's safe and it's kind. Um, and I think by being all those things, it naturally becomes um, radically kind as well. So I don't, it's not going to be something where like I say, like colloquially or like casually, I'll say like this is the X factor, but it's not. Like it will
Yeah.
be in a way, but like in terms of like a loose structure, but in terms of like how um like what will be received and how we'll like look after people who want to kind of join the process, I think that would be
Yeah. So the way it's,
any weird boot camp or whatever. It's not going to be like necessarily skills based.
yeah, it's more about attitude then, isn't it? It's more like a, yeah, willingness to embrace others, to be friends, to be in a space together, and that's quite.
Yeah.
I hadn't actually clocked that before, you know. I'd thought there would be a kind of more of a skill element, just because I was thinking about the X Factor element, but already that's quite a challenge to the system to.
It is. I think, like, of course, skills are like welcome and like, yeah, warranted, etc. But I think it's important to not exclude. Like, if someone has an attitude or a curiosity that aligns with
Mm,
Sahel, then it's not like an immediate no, just because you're yet to learn to play the donkey or whatever, you know. And even that, like these instruments around me, that's specific to me, and
yeah,
I'm very aware that this is my offering,
yeah,
um, and it's
yeah,
the way I'm thinking about it is around like, okay, how are all of these offerings kind of in unison or in unity with each other, in community with each other as well.
yeah. So I think that's part of what I mean, from our point of view, we're learning as an organization, you know, learning as the individuals who are part of it and working with you and learning of other cultural positions, other religions, spiritualities, all the instrument names, all these different things coming on. That's kind of exciting just to be adopting that, being able to share a bit of time and space with all those things. I think that's why this idea of a day of a community coming and being in the gallery and taking it over, and we're just sort of hosting and
Yeah,
working alongside. It's all part of this. I mean, it's been a, it's been about a year sort of research, hasn't it, and thinking
yeah,
through and talking through ideas, and there's still the outcomes of the projects, the kind of docu-musical performances, film elements, sculptural elements. They will all be next year, like late, like almost summertime next year, and run into the year after. So it's kind of yeah, this is why there's a lot of things that you're juggling as well, I think, in terms of ideas and forms, materials, and it's like we're halfway there, aren't we, at the moment?
yeah. Don't know about half, but we're somewhere. We're along the way, I
Or
think.
a quarter, a third,
Maybe.
a third of the way. That's what we want to hear. Yeah, I'm just thinking about what else. What are other elements that we haven't touched on yet that kind of begin that are going to occupy some of your time over the next 6 months?
Yeah, I think that one of the biggest components will be the docu-musical, which I define in this project as being part documentary and part musical by way of this is now stranded into two like either options or like um, different like outputs. So one output would be documentary segments with live performances, which so effectively the docu-musical disrupts itself.
Yeah.
Um, and then a second output would be where it's not live and it's not screened or performed live, then um, in place of the live performances would be kind of short form music videos, if you like.
Hmm.
Um, So effectively, Saheli will be, well, first of all, Saheli will be formed because like that's still like a mystery yet. And then the documentary segments will follow the arc of Saheli's formation, and all of those contextual, musical underpinnings, etc. And then we'll kind of move into presenting that to the wider
Mm,
world. And then also,
cool.
in addition to that, whether that's like an album or
Yeah.
like a series of performances or an events program, whatever the case. Those are all. It sounds like a little bit chaotic at the moment, just because there are so many components to it. But I think an anchoring um, element of the project will be the docu-musical.
Yeah.
In doing so as well, like the opportunity to collaborate with so many different people, whether that's like people that are speaking uh, on the docu-musical, or whether there are people who are like part of the like music video elements of it, whether that's like Saheli itself, whether that's people that are judges in the strange like X Factor auditions. You know,
Mm.
there will be so many different um,
Who
opportunities.
are who are the judges going to be?
You can think of one. Me, no, I'm joking. Just like not sure yet. But I certainly have people in mind.
Cool.
And so yeah, it's about like making sure that the project itself, like by its own essence, is like participatory too, and that whatever happens like there forward is something that like carries the fabric of that. So being non-hierarchical, being inclusive, being radically kind, etc. But like, and of course, like skills like are involved in that, but also skills can be developed over time. So
Yeah.
I think it's like you said at the moment about attitude, really.
How do you think how are you how are you linking in SEMA World into into this sequence? Do you see it as a section or a new element of SEMA World or
So my like practice for anyone who knows it is like very much like can be quite screens based and very like animated, very like mixed media world building, very moving image and filmic, etc. So there are many new things like SEMA world wise, which
Mm,
at the moment. But I think that there will definitely be like heavy world building elements. I certainly want it not to be a documentary just like for documentary's sake.
yeah.
Um, and absolutely want it to be something that's far more speculative, um, that can convey like a documentarian kind of approach, or like can converse in a documentarian way without necessarily being like, somebody speaks to a camera, for example.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think that will take explorations and experimentation into like what that looks, feels like, sounds like, etc.
Yeah.
Hi there. Where could I find Turk project?
Sorry.
Hey,
That's
Anita.
all. Hi. Sorry.
That's right. You can, yeah, if you look up SEMA World, you
Yeah,
find
sorry
the
about that.
website.
Don't worry about
Um,
it. You can look at SEEMAWORLD or Eastside projects. There's more about this specific project on Eastside projects.
yeah, but there is SEMA's website has got a lot. I mean, that's what I think is quite interesting. All the characters and the names, the way that you play with names as like genres or cultural glitches or all sorts of things where you mess up words and they become identities. I mean, is that something that you imagine might play out within the band also? So band members' names and characters and
Absolutely. So um, again, like for anyone who knows like my practice in short, SEEMAWORLD is stranded, and they have like each strand is reflected in a specific deity. Um, so I know this for a fact that I want to be introducing a sub deity to this project who will look after Saheli because it's such a big offering. Um, and that's something that will be kind of like uncovered and developed with local communities, etc., in the listening party that we'll have in September.
yeah,
Um,
right.
the plan is to work with Trueform projects on, and Ravina, who's an amazing DJ, and has her own collective as well called Dunia. Um, and the plan is in September to have a listening party, which kind of conveys or gives like insight into what Saheli might sound like, and at the same time prompting anyone who's in the space at ESAB projects to think about what Gato, so Kato, and I'll explain context in a second, but what this sub-deity like does to kind of like guard Saheli or represent Saheli, if you like. And so you'll see more of that character. That character isn't like a character that exists in my fictional or like speculative planet, but does exist like as part of my art practice in general, but is a sub-deity to this project, if that makes sense. And just to say, Gadro refers to a specific Punjabi folk instrument, which is used often in Bhangra, in Punjabi folk dance. And it's called Gadro because that means squirrel, and it's like a squirrel, and it's about harvesting, and it's about kind of like using that to storytell kind of tales of harvest, if you like, and squirrels and harvest time and the way they kind of like chase.
Yeah. Is that when you say that is the name of the instrument and that will be the name of the sub deity, is that you are bestowing that idea of it? It's not a pre-existing deity that has that name.
No.
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 Yeah, you're inventing it, you're creating it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Thanks.
There's going to be a lot of that going on.
Yeah.
I mean, we were sort of looking forward to how. I mean, that's what makes sense on the SEEMA World website. You kind of, but you need to put things into order and see relationships between people, which I guess is what we will be doing through exhibition making and through the sequencing of and editing of all those different elements that you'll be working on. I mean, I quite like the fact that all these events that we're talking about, in a way, they are what you could say is in this sort of research stage of a project, but they also are very active, potentially really enjoyable social situations where things can happen, and it changes the work along the way, doesn't it? So I guess that's what feels exciting at the moment. We still don't really know where we're going to get to. We're just
I think that's also like really exciting and chaotic, like the fact that we talk so much about Saheli and this and that, but like we don't know who these people are. We don't know how many people, we don't know what it's going to look and feel like, but that's also very much part of like the fantastical and speculative nature of it.
Yeah. But I think that's a good place to be in. We're just keeping on it, pushing all the different buttons, and also sort of working with other partners and people who want to join in and be part of the development of that process, because it has so much potential. I guess that's the other side of our relationship, also how we work together on developing something like this. I'm just aware of the time and thinking if people have got questions, we should open it out. I don't think there's no questions in the chat. If anyone wants to ask a question, just do your hands up and hopefully we can see them all. Maybe there's a better way for me to see everyone. Aha. I can see applause. Hand clapping, but I can't see any raised hands. But what's that say? Oh, what's that? I tried. Was this the question? Sorry, I don't know what we mean. T says I tried. What do you mean, T? Try to raise your hand. Well, just unmute and ask away if you want. Go for it.
Okay, can you hear me? Just to
Yes.
check. Perfect.
Yeah,
I joined very late, but I am excited to rewatch it. I've only recently, so we're talking the last week, found out about SEEMAWORLD. I think it's brilliant. In fact, I found out about SEEMAWORLD and unintentionally also I went to an art fest in Birmingham and also intentionally didn't realize brought art from SEEMA as well.
Ah.
But I love creature design. I love world building. I think that's fantastic. I can see it's in a lot. Well, from my point of view, joining in, it looks like it's very South Asian inspired. I think that's fantastic. It's a culture I haven't explored much of. Um, but when did you actually start building this? Because I can see it's an entire like world you've sort of built. When did you actually begin this?
You mean the project or SEEMAWORLD in general?
I suppose a project, but Seema World as well, if you're happy to answer.
Well, okay, so I used to have a very like um confused practice, I would say,
Hmm.
uh, like maybe pre 2020, and then like honestly, lockdown really helped me to just like skill up, and I self-taught. Like I taught myself in a lot of different things, whether that was
Hmm.
animation, like a bit more of like kind of like digital illustration, etc., and like then started to world build from there. Um, and like prior to that, I always had kind of a storytelling mind. So I was always interested in narrative design and ensuring that, like, not ensuring, but like really thinking and being curious about like telling my own stories from like a cast lens, etc., or like a lens of someone like myself who like deals with multiple intersections
Hmm.
of personhood. So like for me, like I was just very much like interested in getting stories out urgently. And
Yeah.
ironically, I found that like animation was like the way to do that, even though it takes forever. But
Yeah.
yeah, like that was for me like the most urgent tool I had, and so I just really developed that a lot, like on in my own time, and then kind of like that kind of spanned more of a like a world building practice, where then like as we were talking about earlier, sorry, T, I know you joined,
Yeah.
but, but you weren't around earlier, but we were talking about like my involvement with my local temple, etc., and how
Hmm.
I developed um, a love for playing instruments there. Um, but then like slowly all of those things started to kind of become like familial to one another, and then SEEMAWORLD kind of like developed itself or became like more self-generating in a way in sort of 2021 onwards. And then this project itself kind of came about like this time last year.
That's fantastic. It's really interdisciplinary as well. I really appreciate like seeing that because that's something I want to explore is interdisciplinary arts. That's absolutely fantastic. Thank you for answering.
Thank you.
Cool. I was wondering that whether anyone might have come across you at Duplicate over the weekend. Kind of nice chance to get up close and see some works in progress as well.
As I was saying to you earlier, Gavin, it's like it's just really weird because I'm not like I'm not known for being like a print woman,
Yeah,
to be present there in that kind of way was really interesting. But
yeah.
yeah, it also gave like insight into like the different forays in which like cinema could go, like
Mm.
different avenues and so many different like exciting strands and deities. Um,
Yeah, I thought that was interesting how you converted something which has got all these technological outputs and realities, and then it's quite, very traditional forms that you're making things with. I mean, contemporary as well in terms of sticker production and all sorts of things going on there, but
yeah,
it's kind of nice having that. I really liked the kind of wood block prints that are using these characters which look like ultra funky animated CGI strange deity things. They're kind of amazing. So
a good word to describe like what my practice feels like at the moment, which is like a bit funky actually.
yeah.
Kind of like
But got a question here from Marley, which is a nice question. Who or what is your artistic rock? It says interpret rock however you wish.
um,
How,
I
how
think,
do you wish?
but I've got to go with my cat. I think like if we're talking like from a labor perspective and what keeps me going, I genuinely think a lot of it has to do with interaction with my cat. Um, if we're talking,
So that's the rock that keeps you grounded. Is that what you mean? Or it inspired, or the cat's inspiration, or your muse, or what?
yeah, like it's like a kind of like a I think like it's just like the purest form of love.
Mm.
And so I think that's something that like I really try and seek out in the work, like not to be so like to academicize this too much, but um yeah, like I'm really interested in like the pure materiality of things, and like
Mm.
uh, I think especially because like with caste as subject matter, but also like as a system of power, um, a lot of that is rooted in purity and impurity, and so like a genuine authenticity to something living, something tangible is important to me. I think it really like she holds me, and
Yeah.
also responsible for stuff. That's maybe on a personal level. On otherwise, like artistically or creatively, who's my rock? I think
Yeah.
much more difficult question. Um, but I think Marley, this is a good conversation to have with a coffee, I think. But I uh, so there are, I don't know.
I'm just thinking of the fact on the desk here, we've got the art game edition that you bought for us all here to play this game. And we were going through it when we like flipping, every card is an artist. And it's kind of interesting world of options, of choices of who was in that pack of cards. And then who is sort of underpins
Yeah,
who you feel connected to.
yeah,
It's often a completely different set of reasons and
right. And I think that's like it's interesting you say that, Gavin, because it's not on brand for me to like consider like someone who's maybe on that game like a rock or an icon for me. I think
yeah.
the icons for me or the rocks for me are like the local superstars around me.
Mm.
And like if we have like if we're talking about like a creative or a artistic like rock or like person who I have been obsessed with, maybe like we're talking about I would consider Pratibha Palmer, a filmmaker, someone whose work I really kind of always go back to. Um,
What
in
was the name? I didn't catch the name, sorry.
Pratibha Palmer, a
Okay.
filmmaker. She has like some of her earlier works really deal with kind of like this like a queer identity, but through a South Asian lens. And the way, like the form and composition of those films, I think for me are like often that the way in which it kind of weaves in and out of like feeling documentarian,
Yeah.
feeling
Yeah.
tricksy, feeling playful,
Mm.
super expressive, very sonic. Like those different elements of those kinds of works for me are like something I always go back to. I don't know if that's answered your question, Molly.
I was also thinking back to when you were first talking about some of the music that has fed into or partly inspired or is like the oppositional sort of music, and you were showing us pictures of groups and bands who were from like the 1980s or 1970s, maybe even, or individual stars who would come around, but they may not have necessarily influenced you creatively, but they're still kind of reference points within the project, aren't they? I suppose.
For sure. I think as well, like in front of me, I have a few kind of like CDs and things, or like devotional CDs, which like very much speak to like what I'm obsessed about recently or like care a lot about in terms of um, kind of sonic output, but also input and like what I resonate with and what I connect with, and also then how that manifests or like imprints on onto this project and to this work. Um, I'm particularly interested in like the proximity to celebrity. So like we've spoken before about like when people come to Temple and they sing and they're like a guest star and things like that. Like I find that really interesting, or like particularly in the Midlands, the ways in which um like a someone who's considered a Bhangra star is like also somebody who works like could work with you in a call center, etc. Has two, three, whatever jobs. I
Mm.
find all of that really interesting. And so maybe if we're still talking about rocks, this is maybe veering somewhere else, but that's definitely something that informs and kind of inspires much of what I'm thinking about at the moment.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I don't think we've got any other questions unless anyone. I think I can see everyone. So I am happy to like let's just wrap it up there because I think we've covered a lot of territory. And thank you so much, Seema, for weaving in and out of all these different things that you're up to at the moment. Let's mention, so we've got coming up, we've got the on the 19th of July, that's when we're planning to have the Valmiki Educational Day or party. I think in a way it probably will have a sort of festival-esque vibe to it. So you're very welcome to come along to that. And we'll be obviously putting the call out and letting everyone know about that. And then the other element was the listening party that we'll do in September. And then otherwise, keep looking out for our mail outs and check out on the website and on Insta, and you'll see stuff that's coming up with us also. Yeah, you're getting some applause and thanks are coming in. Thanks everyone for attending and listening, and hope to see you all soon. Cheers.